It's way past time I dispense some indiscriminate justice!
G'day guys, Duckville here. Welcome to Game 2 of Dell vs Moon, the pre-NASL warm-up games for Moon before his games with Grubby back in about a week ago now, I suppose it was. And this particular game will be on Metalopolis. Now this is the MLG version of Metalopolis, so that means two things. Number one, you can't actually bunker up the ramp here with two bunkers as it used to be. It actually needs to be three, or you can't actually do three pylons, I don't think, anymore. It actually pretty much fully just stops any sort of building down here at the bottom of the ramp. I can't actually show you, unfortunately, but the other thing that is a part of this map is that you can't actually have close ground spots. So there was no chance that Moon is actually going to spawn over here for Dell, and there was no chance that Dell was going to spawn over here for Moon. Now that means two things. Number one, helps out Zerg a lot because of course 2 gate or 2 racks as it would be for Terran is a big thing in this particular map in its earlier incarnations, where you would just get rushed. It would be a lot of trouble to stop early Zealots or Marines, and as we can see here, Dell doing a great job just following up with this probe, coming straight in as he did in game 1, doing a little bit of harass here, going to need a little bit of micro to keep this guy alive. But those are the two main things of this, actually stopping that spawning pool, which is very cool. Happens from time to time. You might just do it on purpose, or you might do it accidentally, but either way, it's actually really cool if you can actually block someone from building something like that. I actually had trouble earlier on today, as Zerg actually was giving me trouble trying to build a cybernetics core, so it was just a little bit annoying. But game 1, we saw Dell get just sort of stuck on 2 base there. Of course, it is still very powerful for a Protoss to be on 2 base, but when you're against a rampaging macro Zerg like Moon, where he actually got up 4 bases and was prepared for pretty much anything, of course, with a lot of roaches. He had a lot of Zerglings, Mutas, and even some Hydras were in the mix there, I believe, just at the end there. So it was just a little bit of trouble for Dell to actually get a victory there, of course. And as we can see, this probe is actually still alive, causing all sorts of trouble in the base of Moon. He's actually gotten this drone down to 14 health. It may go further down, but it looks as if Dell is just going to make sure he's on top of what's happening here at the natural. As we can see here, you can see he's actually just making sure he's sneaking down to the natural and making sure that nothing is being built there, because of course that's probably the biggest thing. If you can ever block a Zerg is make sure you can block their hatchery from being built. So try and keep that in mind when you are playing yourselves on the ladder or in custom games, or however you roll with the punches, but that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, of course, in game 1, sort of went over a bit about Moon and how his history has been. Of course, Dell, I thought we could have a quick little chat about in this little bit of downtime for the game. Dell, of course, has been around the scene for a long time. Of course, he's actually been pretty much a pillar of the community in an events sort of fashion. He's actually helped set up a lot of tournaments, and he's participated in a lot of them, of course, as well. And of course now he's actually part of the FXO esports team, actually helping out with setting up events such as the FXO Invitational and the Shatter the Sky tournament, that sort of thing, which he has been doing a great job of. Now let's just quickly look at what Moon is up to here. He has actually a few extra Zerglings. You normally don't see this many Zerglings out right at the start here unless there's some sort of plan in mind, such as Banelings or perhaps some sort of bus, but there's no Baneling nest on the way, so a little bit confused as to what he's got going on right now. Let's have a quick look at the units tab. We actually have 22 Lings. Perhaps he was expecting some sort of early expansion from Dell, but Dell is not actually going for that. It does look as if he will be going for that 3-gate sentry expand, perhaps, but either way, a lot of Zerglings is not actually going to really counter that, because of course the whole point of doing that 3-gate sentry expand is that you can actually block out Zerglings and actually pick them off with the tickle ray of the sentries, and then you can actually get that expansion up and running. Now this is the one thing which does concern me. If Dell goes for this early expansion without actually being fully prepared for it, normally when you do this you actually have around about 5 or sometimes 6 sentries to actually help out with defending. He may succumb to some very heavy pressure, or at least actually fall to the actual pressure which comes along, of course, and actually may need to cancel some of these buildings here, but it looks as if he's finally got a few out here. He's got 5 sentries in total. He looks as if we will have a little bit of a bust here. Some force fields are going to need to go down to protect these sentries. They do indeed, but it looks as if a lot of these units are still dying for FOXDEL. He's in a little bit of trouble here. A few shots on the Nexus will be needed for Moon, but he actually, not sure if that was a preemptive cancel or even if it was needed at all, but has obviously delayed the expansion there for FOXDEL a great deal, not to mention losing a few of these sentries and a few of the others that went down in that main engagement there. Beautiful little harass from Moon, so he's done a great job of cutting down the amount of sentries and of course slowing down the expansion of FOXDEL as well. Now, it looks as if I'm going to say we're going to see a baneling nest very soon. No roaches, so we're going to have more roach pressure. I'm just a little bit surprised at this third hatchery straight away in the natural. A lot of times, actually, what you'll see is that Zergs will actually put it down over here somewhere to actually give a little bit of a block across this choke point here. If you can lower the surface area of the choke, you can actually help in actually defending this natural expansion, which of course in turn means your main and can of course mean the third base as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you are setting up that third hatchery if you are doing it inside the natural. Meanwhile, back at FOXDEL's base, he's got a Colossus on the way. No range just yet. He's sort of still in a little bit of a fickle position for his economy stakes, and it looks as if he is scouting around with a probe. I'm not sure if this was a hero probe from before that was taking shots at random drones and stealing minerals, but it certainly is coming around here into a good spot. If he can perhaps put down, he might be looking to put a pylon down just so he can perhaps have some sort of backdoor units that may come in. As we can see, there's a pylon there. Now this one isn't actually for this is probably not going to be for actually warping in any units, but it will be for denying that third expansion just for a little bit longer than it normally would have been coming. I think the problem for FOXDEL is that this hatchery is already up and running in this expansion here, but it does look as if a drone is going to come along. It will be blocked off there. The Lings are going to need to cut down this pylon there, and they will be able to do that in a very quick time. Natural expansion now done for FOXDEL. He's still a little bit low on the units just at the moment, of course, with that massive setback for his economy there. Of course, now actually being against a gold base here. If Moon actually gets this up and running, that'll essentially be GG straight away. If he can get that going and get the economy, he can probably just flat out start swarming Neo Sauron style, just like July Zerg would, where you actually just start streaming in units with no end in sight and just roll all over your opponent. But we'll see if he gets into that sort of mode. I would be a little bit surprised perhaps, because he is a Warcraft 3 player, may not be aware of that particular strategy, but we'll see what happens. It looks as if some roaches will be coming out shortly. We don't have any just yet. There they are. We've got a few roaches now that have popped out. They will get their speed very soon. That's almost done. Burrow is on the way. And it looks as if the Overlord movement speed is also done. He's going to be using these to scout out the map. Let's just have a quick look at what he's up to. There we go. We do have a very speedy Overseer just scouting through, seeing what FOXDEL is up to. He will see that there are a few gates there. Essentially the exact same build that we saw just before. I'm not sure if this is part of the practice that Moon had asked FOXDEL to do, was to actually do the 5-gate robo-style 2-base build, but he certainly is just stuck with that same build for the moment. Now, one thing which you can obviously take into your kit if you're a Zerg player is, check this out. This expansion, the third, or what would be the third down here, is currently a little bit covered off from the creep there, but it is going to go down now. But this expansion and this expansion, everything is covered. Essentially, the whole base, the whole map is actually covered, with perhaps the exception of this, but the Xel'Naga watchtowers will give a little bit of assistance in that regard. So always try and keep as much vision of the map as you can when you're playing. Especially for Zerg, this can become a little bit of a problem in the mid to late game when you're just a little bit of you actually get a little bit of a blackout as to what your opponents are doing, because there are such things as Phoenix. You can see Void Rays, you can see random stalkers just running around the map shooting down Overlords, and it just becomes quite a lot of trouble to actually try and keep that map vision, which we do have. Now, if we have a look on the inverse side of things, FOXDEL still way in the dark here, does not know about the third base here. You can probably assume that that's up, has no clue about the gold, and will probably be in a lot of strife if he does push without actually checking out what is going on on the map at the moment. So Void Ray is starting to pop out here. This is the laser party build, which has become very common, of course. As I mentioned before in Game 1, a lot of Protoss actually like to do this particular style, where you just start getting out Void Rays, you get a third base up, and you can just start pumping out Void Rays and Colossi, and then once you get on top of that sort of count, you can actually deflect any sorts of builds that that your Zerg opponent will throw at you, because once it gets to that sort of 5 Colossus and maybe 5 to 6 Void Ray stage, it becomes a very big ask to actually deal with these sorts of units, and especially with this +1 weapons on the way. So I think that Del has actually spotted that gold base was up and running. He is now going to push in, which is probably the best thing he can do. If he can cut the gold expansion down, he'll obviously be in a much better position. But there are infestors now, and the infestors will have their fungal growth, which of course does the extra damage to armored units, so he will be able to put that down. There it is on some of these stalkers. Stops the stalkers from blinking if they had it. I know they don't have it at the moment, but they do stop stalkers from blinking. These Colossus decided to take out that statue instead of actually shooting at the rampaging roaches that are coming through here. Meanwhile, the roaches do have their +1 to weapons. They do have spiky hair and burrows, so they will be able to move around if needed. And the only thing that is actually going well here for Del, unfortunately, is this Void Ray, which is just poking away at this base. Took out a few drones, and he's probably going to take out this hatchery as well. I would not be surprised if Moon actually just decides to push in. He should know that there's not really too much for Del going on at the home base. He's got these 6 stalkers, and that's about it, because unfortunately just the position that he was in was a bit troublesome. And there we go, the Roach is starting to push in now. We do have +2 weapons just about done for Moon, so he's going to be able to absolutely cut through these stalkers once that is done. But as we can see already, he's doing a great job of that at the moment. Probes coming up for Del to try and help out with the defense. Of course, the Colossus decides to walk straight into battle and gets absolutely crushed there by the roaches. And I think that is going to be the end for Del. This third base is going to be removed by this one roach, and of course the natural is now down and out as well. The infestors have come along for the party. There is nothing to actually shoot down this. There it is. I was actually going to say some infested Terrans will be able to shoot down the Void Ray, but he's already dead. And some more fungal growth on the high ground. Roaches burrowing, going through here. We can actually see what Moon can see there. He can't see some of these other units that are down to the side, but he will be able to rush through there. And even a Contaminate going off on one of the gateways is going to slow down any reinforcements from Del, and that is going to be it there. We do have a GG and a lol you rate me from Del, and I think that was probably going to be expected from this particular matchup, but it was a valiant effort from Del to be able to hold off Moon for just a little while, and apparently he forgot about this gold base. But just a great little game there from Moon, being able to control the map, of course, as we mentioned before, vision being a big important part of being a Zerg player, making sure you have vision of all the expansions so you can tell when your opponent's doing some sort of expansion, and then you can do a timing attack based on that. And of course getting these roaches, which are quite powerful against many of the Protoss units in the arsenal there. But as we mentioned, a high-level Korean player against Del. Unfortunately, just a little bit too much there. But of course, this was just a warm-up for the NASL. So if you want to see what happened with Moon in the NASL, jump on NASL.tv, and you can see how he went against Grubby there. You can check out the VODs and find out what happened. Of course, do keep in mind that GSL will be restarting from tomorrow, or perhaps by the time I actually get this uploaded, it'll be today for some of you. And make sure you tune in for GSL, and I will be starting up a show called After the Game with There Is No Saurus, and we will be actually doing just a little bit of post-game analysis of the GSL. We'll have a look at some things that went well for the players, some things that didn't go so well, and hopefully some of you guys can join us. So if you want to know more about that, let me know on Twitter. Just go to @DuckphilLol, and I'll tell you all about it. But hopefully you guys enjoyed these 2 games, a little bit of a sort of secretive warm-up there for Moon, and hopefully we will get some more games going up shortly. Cheers.